little bit of a teensy-weensy fade there as Taiwan Semi's not quite invigorating the tech trade just yet. NVIDIA only up 0.5%. Tom's with me here in studio looking at options on Taiwan Semi, NVIDIA, AMD, and the lot. James Demmert joins us, founder and chief investment officer at Main Street Research at the site at the New York Stock Exchange. James, Taiwan Semi about as important as any chip maker out there right now. How come we're not ripping on this report?
Well, good morning, Oliver. I think that the thing here is it's a bit of a microcosm for what we're going to see this year. Maybe spectacular enthusiasm, but more tempered than what we saw in 23 and 24. I think across the semi business in general. So I think that's a bit of what you're seeing with the flow over from the TSM, which were excellent numbers, top and bottom beats. Really fabulous numbers for it. Maybe I would consider one of the most important companies in the semi business.
Yeah, kind of a real clean, pretty report, right?
Yeah, it was clean, and you know what I thought was really interesting is not just the beat on the top and the bottom, but the guidance was very significant. And let's keep in mind, you know, they are the backbone of making anything AI in the semiconductor business. So obviously selling to NVIDIA and everyone else. And you know, as the business changes and it matures, again, we're still in the early phases of the AI transformation. Different players are going to be buying the fabrication services of TSM. So it won't be just NVIDIA, which is why we think TSM is one of the most important companies to own in the space. But keep in mind, you know, all of these semis did extremely well in the last 18 months, fueled by a tremendous amount of cash that was out there on the sidelines, most of which is gone, and also the Fed policy, which was really lowering rates, and we think that's over with. So these companies are going to have to now trade on earnings, and that's going to make it very important that we're very specific about our stock selection.
Okay. So tell me about that specific stock selection. Do you think that it behooves one to avoid the broader semiconductor basket or ETF and stay with a few specific names, or can I just buy SMH and let it ride?
Yeah, I think buying SMH and letting it ride was a 23-24 story. 25 is going to be a different type of year. It's going to be much more specific. And there's where you really want to go with the leadership positions, where valuations make sense. And you got to expect that they're going to trade on their earnings growth, not those other influences. So TSM is a core holding there. NVIDIA with the new Blackwell chip. You know, that chip is 30 times faster than the first generation of their AI technology. So there's going to be appetite for that as well. So those are two core positions. I think when you start to look at the rest of the semi business, you see a lot of companies that kind of lost the arms race to NVIDIA or TSM as a fabricator.
To your point, the whole group of semis has been kind of stuck. The other thing, too, I wonder is that with TSM being the fabricator, obviously you fabricate after you come up with the idea, NVIDIA being the genesis of all these ideas. Does it represent to any extent a kind of aging maturation of this cycle?
You know, I'm not sure about that, but you know, I think there is risk in TSM with it when it comes to tariffs, and you know, they had some recent sales that were found out to go to Hawaii, which were very concerning. So there's going to be some regulatory pressure on TSM. Trump is walking tall, carrying a big stick about the tariffs. I think they'll stay away from TSM since they're also operating plants here in the United States over the next few years. But you know, the semi business and the initial big flush up from AI, that's maturing. And that's why we want to have investors, yes, own these core semi companies that I mentioned, but look for the second derivative companies, those companies like Now or any of the others like Palantir who bought those AI chips, and now you're seeing accelerating revenue as that second generation starts to kick in.
Hey, James, what do you think about other potential plays? I'm looking at your notes, and it seems like you've still got some hope for AMD, Advanced Micro. Could it be a comeback year for them?
Yeah, you know, that's a stock that's taken a lot of patience, and I think it's fair to say that they have lost the arms race. NVIDIA just, you know, ate their lunch. But what they've got coming is, there's a new generation of PCs coming this year, which is all going to be AI integration. So there's going to be a big product cycle change. New PCs are going to be in demand. That's a huge market for AMD. So that is not a position we own very much of any longer. But if we do, that's really why I would own it, is that you've got that new generation of gaming and of course the PC market. But generally speaking, in the semi business, NVIDIA, TSM is really where you want to play it.
Okay. Like the thoughts. Thanks, James. Appreciate the perspective.
My pleasure.
Some hope for AMD. Let's start there, Tom.
Yep.
When you look at the options for Advanced Micro, is it a cheaper play now? Have people like dispersed from the stock after it got slammed last year?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Lisa Su hasn't made any comments. We got Jensen Huang out there repeatedly in the headlines, talking about their business, and we've seen some mediocre earnings results the last couple of quarters in AMD. They do report earnings on the 4th of February, so we'll get some more clarity from AMD and Lisa Su as far as, are they taking any market share? They've got just barely 10% of the GPU market share for AI right now. Does that actually go lower, or does it rebound and go higher? Stocks pulled back nearly 50% from those all-time highs we saw 10 months ago in March. So there might be opportunity there. I just think you might want to be a little bit more conservative, and that's a strategy I looked at in AMD, where you can still take a bullish stance on it, but give yourself better probability of success here. So I went out to the January 31st weekly series, so I'm going to avoid that earnings event, but trade ahead of it, right? Expires on the 31st, 15 days to expiration, where I'm just going to sell an out-of-the-money put vertical. I don't want to sell a cash-secured put where I just sell a naked put in case the stock does pull back. Maybe the overall market helps it pull back. But if you think it's going to rebound or at least consolidate here, this takes advantage of that. Sell the 118 strike put in the January 31st weekly cycle, and then buy the 115 strike put. So a short $3 wide put vertical to the downside, collecting roughly about $1.10 credit. That's what you can make on it. You got about $1.90 or $190 in risk on this one. Takes your break even down just below 117. So there's that cushion that I talked about. You got about 2% move to the downside before you start getting hurt on this one. But it's a neutral to bullish type of stance, staying conservative, implied volatility level still relatively elevated, and you're avoiding that earnings event in this neutral to bullish strategy.
Okay, yeah, avoid the big events that have been disappointing for AMD, frankly. Right. Tell me about TSM here. What do you think after the pop on the earnings? Is it worth taking a stab higher or fade the move? What do you think is appropriate?
Well, I looked at it from the perspective of, hey, let's give myself a little bit more duration than the previous trade and take that bullish stance. But it doesn't have to be one of those things where the stock goes up another 10, 15% from here over the next month. So I went out to the February 14th weekly cycle. So you've got 29 days to expiration on this one, where I'm going to buy an unbalanced or broken wing call butterfly, as we call it, so we can offset some of the cost to get into this bullish trade. So I'm going to buy one of the 220 strike calls, sell two of the 240 strike calls, that's where you want it to go, and then buy one of the 245 strike calls. So in essence, you're buying a $20 wide bullish call vertical, offsetting some of the cost by selling the $5 wide call vertical with that same common strike that you're short two options at on the 240 strike. You're paying roughly about a $5, $6 debit for this call butterfly. It takes your break even up to about 225, 225.50 or so over the next month. That's only about 2.5% above the current share price. So you don't need a monster move to the upside. You want it to continue to grind higher over the next month. And we're going to get some other chip earnings over that period.
Yes, we are.
So that could be the catalyst to the upside if you think that TSM is going to continue to move higher. We're just below those all-time highs also.
Yeah. All right. Well, today TSM is out on a limb by itself, basically, with the big rally. AMD is down 1%. NVIDIA's only up $1 right now, but at least off the lows from a couple moments ago. Thanks for the trades, Tom. Thanks, James Denver, for the thoughts on Taiwan Semi's leadership on the fabrication side.